We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and welcome to the fifth public meeting of the Board of Commissioners work session for March the 7th, 2016. And please take the roll, if you would.
Commissioner D'Amelio is not here. Commissioner Pukleski.
Here. Here.
Commissioner Lewis.
Here.
Commissioner Holmes.
Here.
Commissioner McGarity.
Here.
Commissioner Wexler.
Here.
Commissioner Oliva is not here. Commissioner Connell.
Here. Thank you very much. And Chief, if you would, could we have the crime update, please?
For the month of February, Commissioners, 255 traffic citations were written, 203 parking tickets, 252 written warnings. We had a robbery in the Minogue Shopping Center parking lot on February 5th. The suspect was ID'd by a victim. The warrant was issued. It was a dispute between employer and employee. We have burglaries on 2216 500 block of Darby Road, daytime. There's a 4th century jewelry, laptop computer, and iPhone was taken. And on Andover Road, a vacant house, copper wire, and pipe. That was an unsecured house. We had attempted burglaries on 2216 Land Ave Road, overnight window pushed open, and the 600 block of Paddock Road on February 21st for a broken rear window. Once again, thefts from vehicles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. From 2/2 until over the weekend. We got hit very heavily over the weekend in your ward again. Most of them were open, cars left open. We had 2 broken windows of that, but I'll give that next month's report. We had a sex offense on 2416 child pornography. Reported a search warrant was served, and the investigation is ongoing. On Buckland, we had another sex offense we found to be unfounded. On canine usage, we had 1 search warrant on Strathmore Road, 1 building search for trespassers, 2 building search unsecured residents, and we helped Radnor Township with a search warrant. My report.
Any questions? Thank you, Chief. A Township Solicitor update on work sessions.
Okay, thank you. You had asked me at the last meeting to check and make sure that, what the regulations were with respect to work sessions. And what it is really kind of what I had alluded to the other night. There's a requirement by our charter that we meet once a month on the first Monday of each month for our regular meetings. And then from there, in addition to that, it spells out that we should have regulations in place about when our meetings take place and when they don't take place. In the regulations, it provides that we are to have the once a month meeting, and we recently changed that from 8 o'clock to 7:30. Then it also says that you can have a special meeting at the call of the presiding officer or at the call of any 3 commissioners that get together to ask for a special meeting. So that's really about all that it says with respect to, and also a special meeting can be called in 24 hours notice. Taking us back in history a little bit, I remember when I started here about 10 years ago, there was probably more issues, more concrete issues at that point in time, and the meetings were going a lot longer. And I think we decided at that point was when we were going to start having work sessions, and we did that, and we've been doing that probably for maybe 7 years now, 7, 8 years now. We've been having work sessions. So I guess, the bottom line is we have to have the 1 meeting a month, which is our regular meeting. You can have special meetings whenever you want, as long as they're advertised and open to the public. A work session would be what's defined in our charter as a special meeting. It's really up to the board as to whether you want to have the special meetings or work sessions or not.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions?
Sure. Mr. Byrne, there was also the question about, one of the proposals was to allow the township manager and the commissioner, the president, to decide the week in advance if that work session was going to occur. And there were questions raised by some of the commissioners regarding sunshine laws. So at that point, given what you said, the special meeting would already been scheduled and advertising, and the issue would then be canceling it by consultation between the township manager and the president.
Yes, okay. And I don't think that's a problem, because I think the presiding officer, through both our charter and through the administrative code, is given some leeway in how to conduct the meetings and what goes on the agenda, what doesn't go on the agenda. So if there's simply nothing on the agenda or not much on the agenda, and it's decided that you don't need a meeting, then it doesn't say the presiding officer can cancel. It doesn't say the township manager can cancel, but it doesn't say they can't either. So I don't think that that's a problem. It would be a problem if it was the other way, if we were, if we were not, if we were having meetings and they weren't advertised, but they're advertised and we're not having them. I don't think that creates a problem. You certainly want to put it on the, on the internet and, post the premises for sure, because you wouldn't want people coming and being inconvenienced, but I don't think it's a problem in terms of the sunshine law from that direction.
Commissioner?
Well, the question is because depending on what is this coming back on for a vote next week? We tabled it. If it is, I did compile a number of statistics that I can share with the board in terms of the length of meetings, et cetera. And, because there were a lot of statements made, and I wanted to try to see exactly what the details were. And if you want to give me the leeway, I created a presentation. It's very short.
It is not on the agenda for vote for March.
Yeah. It may help. Let me, if I may.
I would, if I may, Mr. President, this is legal advice from the solicitor to the board, and I'm not interfering with Mr. Siegel's comments right now, and I was going to recommend they take place next week and not tonight. But as far as any questions I have of the solicitor about work sessions and regular meetings, I think in the interest of attorney-client privilege, these are communications that should be conducted in the confines of attorney-client privilege, and after that point, we can agree to and then publish ultimately publish the decision of this board. But I prefer to keep Mr. Burns' advice to us as a board on these issues confidential. I think it's more appropriately the subject of an executive session, not the subject of open discussion, especially when nobody else on the board has heard these conclusions until tonight, and we're hearing them the same time we're hearing that the public is hearing them.
So we do have an executive session next week. We could include that in the executive session for next week.
Right, I don't, good, and I'd like, any questions that anybody has now, I would recommend that those questions be raised in executive session. We don't have to have an executive session to have discussions with our solicitor. Our conversations with our solicitor are always seeking legal advice and therefore always privileged. But I want us to maintain that privilege, that confidentiality right now while this discussion is, while this issue is still an open legal issue. But that said, Mr. Siegel, I don't mean to interfere with your comments.
Talk about the legal issues. I just thought it would be helpful for the board and the public to see the statistics in terms of the meetings. And we went through the metadata, which is the information about the meetings, to come up with it. We've had, since they started in 2009, they started right when I came on the board, we've had 66 work sessions. We've averaged 9 a year. This year we're going to have fewer than that. The average length of the work sessions based on the video recordings is 70 minutes. The median length, the midpoint, is 63 minutes, which means half of our meetings were more than an hour long. And as a result, The shortest meeting we had was a work session, I'm talking about, was 18 minutes. We've only had 5 that were less than 30 minutes, and 34 were more than an hour. We've had 50% more regular meetings than work sessions, but over that time, we've still spent 76 hours in the work session. So we've spent a significant amount of time, and you could see the chart that for the meetings, the vast majority, 60 to 90 minutes, and if we look at it for those from 30 to 90 minutes, it's an enormous percentage of our meetings. So from my perspective, this just shows that the meetings aren't typically really short, and that we've obviously had some discussions to have them at this length. And I just thought I would share those statistics with the board.
Thank you very much, and can you send a copy to anybody that wants them?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Or I would say to everyone. Anybody have any further questions or discussion on this matter? Mr. Solicitor?
No, I have nothing further. I just wanted to respond to the question that was asked me.
Okay, thank you very much, and the next time that we discuss this will be next week in the 14th at the executive session.
Have you set a time for that, Chris?
Right now, it's at 6:30.
I know we have
There's a
one real estate
couple-
matter as well, so I just want to make sure we allow enough time.
As of this time, it'll be 6:30. If it's any earlier, everybody will be notified.
Okay.
We would probably notify them.
It's not my position we need to add time to that session. I'm just saying that our questions of the solicitor or our comments to his comments to us should be confined to the executive sessions until we're prepared to act as a board on that issue. We should really confine our communications back and forth with Mr.
I'm fine with
Byrne.
that, we just want to make sure we have enough time, given that I know we have a real estate matter.
Well, I mean, it's not even on our agenda next week, so I mean, it doesn't need to be an issue at next week's work session.
Right, as of this time, the
Yeah.
executive session is at 6:30.
Great.
Thank you. Mr. Pannoni, our annual MS4 update, please.
As Commissioner Connell mentioned, this is the annual update to the Board of Commissioners of our MS4 program. It's a required update. It's a mandated update that the state of Pennsylvania requires that we do. The MS4 system is what is called the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Program. Haverford Township is required to participate in that program. It's a federal requirement administered by the state, administered via the DEP. We last renewed our permit. It's a 5-year permit in March 16th of 2013. So next week that permit will hit its year 3, and then 2 years after that, in March of 26, will be required. That permit will expire, and we'll renew that permit. The program requires that 6 minimum control measures be met. 1, public outreach, public education outreach. 2 is public involvement and participation. 3 is illicit discharge detection and elimination. 4, construction site runoff control. 5 is post-construction runoff control. And number 6 is pollution prevention and municipal good housekeeping. Haverford Township continues to be active with the Eastern Delaware County Stormwater Collaborative and is partnered with Chester Ridley Crum Watershed Association to educate various audiences in the township about stormwater management. Stormwater management is also available to everybody in the general public on the township's website. All of the township's outfalls, there are 173 outfalls in the township. All those outfalls were screened twice in the previous permit period. And those outfalls that had dry weather flows were tested. In the current period, which again will expire in 2018, we're required to screen those outfalls once. Also, by March 15th of 2018, the entire storm sewer system must be mapped. We're working with staff, with both Lori and Larry Gentili in Public Works to determine the extent of that mapping. The short version is we have to map where the pipes are and where they go. That's required by the state of Pennsylvania. We do perform post-BMP inspections. They are funded by, they're the inspection of privately installed stormwater management facilities, such as the stormwater management facilities at the Lanark Quarry redevelopment property. Those inspections are funded as part of our stormwater management ordinance by the applicant and developer, and then administered by us with Lori's office. Upcoming public participation opportunities: the Darby Creek Valley Association has their annual stream cleanup on April 23rd. Chester Ridley Crum has their annual stream cleanup on April 30th. The CRC has their annual meeting on April 10th. And there is a Penn State University Backyard Solutions Healthy Streams presentation by Maggie Dunn from Philadelphia Water Department in the month of March. So that's the update. Again, that is required. That's a mandated update. Any questions that the board has? Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, at this time, we're going to have a discussion on the economic development. Last year, we had an RFP 2015 that we hired Graham Copeland under that RFP, to advise us on economic development here in Haverford Township. This year, the Business Development Committee is also the Economic Development Committee. Mr. Lewis, Mr. Holmes, Mr. Wexler, and Mr. Oliva are on that committee. Prior to that last year, Mrs. Hall and myself were on that committee, but we no longer are. So now the committee has 2 additional people. This year, it is chaired by Commissioner Lewis. This evening, this discussion that has been requested and through Commissioner Holmes, that Mr. Copeland appear here tonight so we can discuss the findings of the Economic Development Committee of last year. And then I will now turn it over to Mr. Lewis. Do you wish to open this up, or I will turn to Mr. Holmes, who is Vice Chair of that committee, and open up the discussion?
Thank you, Mr. President. I mean, I would ask Mr. Copeland to come forward and discuss with us again the comments, basically the options that were presented to us at the end of last year. As you recall, in December, we included in our budget a total amount of approximately $75,000 to fund some or all of the specific projects that were identified by Mr. Copeland. And I thought it would be a good idea for us to discuss those topics again tonight, with perhaps in mind the opportunity to talk again next week at an official meeting, see whether or not any or all of those undertakings are something we'd be interested in starting quickly, especially with it already being March. I thought it was something we should get off the ground. So I know that Mr. Copeland distributed to all of us the document we see up on the screen now, the Township of Haverford Economic Development Review and Program Recommendations. And so I would turn it over to Mr. Copeland.
Commissioner Holmes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come back and meet with you all today. I've put together a brief overview of this report. I'm going to take a couple minutes just to go through these slides, and I'd like to pass around the one page that summarizes the recommendations and the budget amount that was approved in this year's budget. So can I ask to pass that along? And for the 2 new commissioners, the hard copies of this report I have, if you don't mind passing that along as well.
They go to Andy.
So I began with the Economic Development Committee in August of last year, and this shows the activities that were undertaken to commence with a new program. So that included working with you, the Board of Commissioners, in terms of interviews and surveys, met with over 50 business owners, property owners and managers, and other folks working in the realm of the local business community. We held a meet and greet event all 897 of our businesses that we know of here that are paying taxes were invited. We had a good turnout with around 80 businesses. We conducted a survey, similar number, about 80 businesses responded to that to receive feedback. Did tours of the 10 districts and compiled census information and analyzed that, and a review of the previous economic development studies. So we weren't starting from zero, had analyzed all these reports and was able to come to find that a number of the recommendations in the past have been moved on with some very good implementation, and found that a lot of these programs have been put in place by the township. Other findings, excuse me. In looking at the census, the report that they do every 10 years, that is a survey of businesses that can get down to the township level, this was striking information that the two largest segments of the local economy here, retail and healthcare, broadly defined, including anywhere from hospitals to doctors' offices, they're moving in opposite directions. Retail is diminishing by the magnitude of 24% in number of establishments, whereas healthcare is growing with 13% increase in the number of establishments. This was derived from census data. But what we see here on the retail level is a number of businesses that have been out, a number of vacancies. Another thing I noticed, which I documented in the report, in driving around and photographing, you see a lot of properties with signage and facades that have seen better days and really could use some reinvestment. And it occurred to me that the township's effort has been pretty much in front of the issue of revitalization, whereas the private sector in many cases is lagging. Here we find that there are a lot of large sections of commercial corridors where everything is just paved over. There's no green. This is not only an aesthetic issue, but that of groundwater. It contributes to stormwater runoff with no area to catch the runoff. So now coming to the program recommendations, this is the page that I passed around. Recommendations are for recruiting of new businesses, and doing so requires developing data and program and putting together marketing materials. It requires an inventory of commercial properties and putting together a campaign with outreach to the prospective businesses, plus working through the commercial real estate community. So this requires a sustained campaign, and it's market research driven. So a lot of that information has to be compiled, formatted, and presented. And then there's a matter of identifying those prospects and working the real estate community. So that's the first recommendation, and that the first three elements there: conducting outreach campaign, developing business recruitment campaign, and compiling an inventory are elements of that same program. Going down to the...
Could I interrupt for 1 second?
Please.
Mr. Copeland, I recognize that these are three distinct things, but is it your view, because it's my view, that these three things should really all be undertaken at the same time? These
They're-
first three?
Yes, they are all related elements of a program. Correct. And then going to this landscaping seed money matching grants, that and the facade improvement grants are both designed to be matching grants with perhaps a 50-50 match to a private property owner for improvements to their properties in these two different categories, one being facade grants, and that could be anywhere from new windows to paint to signage, on some match basis, and the other being for landscaping for improving the green areas in these commercial corridors identified in the slides. And then the developing a
excuse me,
business, I'm sorry.
Excuse me 1 second. So the 25,000 would be grant money that we would get from the state presumably?
This is all based on funds that were allocated locally by the township.
Oh, last year and last year's budget?
Correct, yes. So everything you're looking at here has been allocated in this year's budget.
So we're looking for the match to come from the business owner?
The property owner and/or business owner, right. And conceivably, that could be a match between landlord and tenant. And should mention, we also have a pledge of $5,000 from a business owner contributing towards this.
I guess my only issue would be whether that seems like a low number, and I'm not sure how much impact that might have. An impact might help with 2 or 3 businesses, but beyond that, it's not not substantial enough to have a big impact. I mean, it's a start, but.
It's a start. And with the new program, frankly, I didn't feel that we could get up and running with all the administrative elements to do that many of them in terms of volume.
Okay.
So there's some groundwork that has to be done before the first grant is administered. And having done this before, I've seen that it takes some hand-holding to even get people to agree to do a matching grant program.
Sure, I would.
So to assume you have, say, $3,000 or $4,000 of township money to the match from the contributing property or business owner, then you're looking at 20,000. That could be 5 in the first year.
Yeah, okay. That's a good
And
start.
I think it would be great if we could achieve 5 in the first year. That would be fantastic.
And Commissioner Lewis, I was certainly game to put 2 million more in the budget, but now that
Sure
you're
you
on
would
board,
be.
yeah, now that
You
now
like
that you're
to
here to
spend money.
support, yeah, now that you're here to support me on this as well, I feel very confident this will work out in 16 and 17.
Well, I feel
I-
we had
if I
to
could ask, though,
walk
we do
before
have-
running on this.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I mean, there is still an opportunity with the facade improvement grants and landscaping seed money grants to seek assistance from the state or from the county on those issues. So, but this does represent township money we set aside in the budget for the purpose of, find the right project and to be able to do it. But if it's matched by 25,000 from a business owner or a landlord, and if it's matched by another 25,000 from the state, then you might be talking about, you may see an impact somewhere. And frankly, 1 or 2 successful things here could make a big difference.
Yeah. I
Yes,
agree.
we're looking at getting traction on a new program, so having several as a demonstration and developing a new process and program around that in terms of guidelines, review process, et cetera. There's not only time required to ramp up, but there's some administration to build it.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is it. There was an email that I sent around with an afterthought about another optional program as a substitute for business retention. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. The last one of $5,000 for a business seminar series. An option for the same cost would be a restaurant week. And it's just another food for thought, so to speak, on something that could be done in a community building, high visibility type program that seems to have some legs in the community from a number of comments that came back through a Facebook page related to the Wednesday night dining club of the HPED. There seemed to be some good support for that. So this concludes my presentation, and this is kind of a summary slide of everything we just talked about here, summarizing some of these different options. And I'd like to conclude with the point that my work with you would be with full reporting on a regular basis to this body, as regular as you would like, in coordination with the staff and the advisory committees as appropriate. And one of the key elements that the Economic Development Committee identified was to be building the bridges with the business community in community building. And that would be an important element of this. And finally, partnering with the organizations out there, HPED and the Civic Council.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
Can you help me out with the comprehensive plan? How does a comprehensive plan impact on the economic development of a community? An updated plan or a not updated plan? How would our present comprehensive plan impact this plan that we have before us?
A comprehensive plan would have in it many different elements, components, economic development being one of them. So a comp plan usually is one that looks across pretty much everything that the town would be considering in its guiding principles over a period of years. This is one element of it. I understand that the comp plan hasn't been updated in a number of
Right,
years.
you had mentioned that last year, along that the plan needs to be updated.
This
Should be
didn't-
updated?
Didn't come from me. It was somebody else's concern, and it came from the Planning Commission, I believe. I mean, they've looked
Okay.
at that. I could be wrong, but there were other folks in the community who were addressing the concern of it being outdated and needing an update.
So it is important that the comprehensive plan is updated for an effective economic development, growth in the community. Part of a key element?
This
part of a key
program
element?
can stand on its own. It doesn't have the benefit of fitting into a bigger picture, so I think it's good to just consider this on its own merits. And this is based on the research that I've done of this community and the work that's been done in other communities. So absent the comp plan, I don't feel that it has to be necessarily tied to that, although I think it's an important thing for that comp plan to be addressed and updated.
Gotcha, okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just had a question in your presentation book on page 8. It seems like we're doing well in terms of healthcare and social assistance and
Yes.
arts and entertainment. It seems like we're struggling in terms of retail trade primarily.
Yes.
And I wonder if you could just address that and what you think we should be doing in that regard.
Well, you look at the winners and losers, and there's, I think, a strategic decision to decide, do you want to spend time looking at addressing the one that is on the decline, that is the retail sector and some of those vacancies, as opposed to supporting the one that's growing, or come up with a strategy of both. So healthcare, I think both are part of a much bigger trend. Meds and eds in this region are healthy, and we're seeing that here as part of that region. So medical offices, anywhere from healthcare systems to doctor's offices, are growing in number and in sales volume by the survey report, the census report. Retail is shrinking. That's part of a bigger trend as well, as you know, e-commerce is displacing a lot of retail with all the online purchasing. So retail is being restructured. And you can even look to see what's happening with the reuse of shopping centers, for example. And in Broomall, a shopping center with a grocery store that went out became a medical facility for a hospital. So that's just one example of how retail is changing dramatically. But these are the kinds of thoughts that should be incorporated into business recruitment, to look to see how the industry is restructuring, who's doing well, who's not. These are all parts of the specific analysis of this retail market.
Do you see yourself as being a resource to landlords, or do you think landlords on their own think they know how to do it better than you do or anybody else in terms of recruiting a retail tenant?
I see myself as being a resource to the extent that the landlords are willing to seek the help. Some get a real estate broker, and those brokers are often very capable. And I look to partner with landlords and brokers. Some landlords don't have the wherewithal to do their own marketing, and then I have actually served as a referral source to landlords. Some don't get a listing with a broker. They don't have representation, and I don't want to present that we are going to be their broker. That's not the case, but certainly can support the effort by generating leads.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Copeland?
Graham, let me, is it your recommendation that we, and I know Mr. Oliva is not here tonight, Mr. D'Amelio is not here tonight, and they're certainly going to want to speak about these topics. I know Mr. Oliva in particular, who is part of our subcommittee. But is it your recommendation that we undertake these first three things first, and that we undertake them together?
Those first three things are one project. They're just broken out as three elements of a project, which is the business attraction. And I feel that takes the most time, that it would require the research and the development of marketing materials and some study. So I think that's the one that I would recommend that we start on first. And I would like to add that HPED has once again found an intern through Haverford College. And I received an email from Gene Angel that they would like to offer up the resources of their Haverford College intern towards that project. So that's great to have that additional work on the ground. So yes,
Right.
On the question of those first three are one project. And the next one that I would recommend would be the facade grant program, and followed by the landscaping greening grant program, matching funds. And at the same time, as you had suggested, we can seek out state money from DCED towards additional funds towards those matching grants.
Mr. Copeland, just
Assuming there's a budget passed, or are you assuming?
Assuming the budget is passed in Harrisburg, that's true.
Really?
There was a release of some DCED funds recently with that stopgap funding measure, I'd heard.
Commissioner McCluskey?
just a question on the timing that you just outlined. In terms of the matching grants for landscaping, if we envision that for this year, I mean, is that something that we need to move up the list because of just natural weather and planting season? And, I mean, if we, the way it was outlined, if we don't get to it till fall, I mean, it's going to be tough to do a lot of landscaping work in the fall. Just a thought.
Well, that's a good point, and it's a matter of priorities.
Okay.
And that's for you all to decide and let me know what your priorities are.
Just seemed like a practical consideration to take into account.
Very good point. It is planting season in a month.
Yeah.
If I may,
Mr.
Commissioner Lewis asked an interesting question in my mind. Do we want to be an asset for the landlords? I think my gut tells me that we've got to do something. We're going to be squeezed on both sides. Within 2 years, on either side of the Manoa Shopping Center, for instance, one of our major shopping centers on Westchester Pike, there's another major shopping center going about 3/4 of a mile down the road on the other side of Lawrence Road that's going to have a giant supermarket, and LA Fitness is going to be going there with a big swimming pool, movie theater, and some other stuff that are on the preliminary plans that were presented to Marple Township. They're also developing a major shopping center adjacent to the Cardinal O'Hara property. The developers pulled back their plans mostly on the housing, but the shopping portion of it on Route 320 there. Ardmore and Lower Merion have increased the shopping there. So 10 minutes this way, 3/4 of a mile down the road on Westchester Pike. The Quarry Center we have, another supermarket. So yeah, do we need to start identifying opportunities for our landlords and point out needs to develop? We need to keep up, I think. I think we can't, we can't sit back and let stores empty. The hardware store is now gone. There's rumors of a national type of store, probably a phone store going into that facility to do that. But the shopping center, in my mind, we need to encourage property owners to revitalize if we're going to maintain a vibrant shopping center within walking distance for our residents. And then we need to kind of be proactive as to help identify what type of facilities we need there from an economic point of view to stay current and competitive with what's going up around us on three different sides. So I think, yeah, I think it might not be a bad idea for us to have some economic development and expertise and advice, even if it's just to let them know what we see going up around us by attending. I've had to attend the planning commission meetings at Marple because of the impact I see on the back of the Ninth Ward coming into from the Marple side with major developments going to impact our sewer lines. I've been meeting with the RHM on that. They've pulled back. There's been a public outcry to preserve open space there. So I think, yeah, I think it's a good point that you jogged my thing. Yeah, we need to be proactive with our landlords to help them develop because we want to stay competitive and modern with what's going up around us within a 3-minute drive one way, 10 minutes for Ardmore with their big development. So we want to stay modern and do that. So I think that's a good point.
Graham, thank you very much for coming tonight with this information. Greatly appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
If nobody else has any other thing, is there any further discussion for this board
On this topic,
on this topic?
I mean, I'm
I know we're finished with questions. And
Yeah, I mean, I would, again, to the extent that we want to redo the discussion next week when two of our fellow commissioners are here, this did not happen in a vacuum. I'm obviously very interested in us undertaking some concrete efforts, especially now that we've budgeted for them, to start, to try to start our economic development plan. I think this first package of materials, which totals about $20,000, it's going to take some significant amount of time, is something that we ought to consider next week. But we ought to consider the entire recommendation and report and talk about it. But I'd like us to add to the agenda authorizing the township manager to, to begin, basically to enter into a contract with Mr. Copeland on one or more of these deals for next week.
Actually, if I may, I'd like to hold off on that to give the committee the opportunity, now with the information at hand, for the four on that committee to please meet, and perhaps you can before next week. But I think these recommendations should come from the committee as a whole. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I mean,
I think that's very important that the committee
we can get together between now and next Monday.
make these recommendations, and please include the Director of Community Development in these, in your discussions. I mean, you have all of this here. You have all of Mr. Copeland's recommendations and what have you. With all that information, if the four of you could get together and with Ms. Woodop and make the recommendation to the board as in what direction you'd like to go. Andy,
It's going to be hard. 3 of the 4 of us are already here, so that's good.
That's true,
need to
but
get married
this is a
on
work
it.
session and not a committee meeting.
I think, well, we could certainly try to make it happen. I mean, worst case, we could do it by phone, but
Yeah,
ideally in
telephone call.
person. Yeah,
When is Mario back? Do we know?
he's back tomorrow, I think,
Oh, great.
Wednesday,
Easy.
I think, yeah.
Terrific.
Maybe we shoot for Friday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
And if you want to make a recommendation under new business, we can go that direction.
Okay. Sounds good.
Anybody have any?
Might be easier just to schedule it. We could always table it if needed be. So it's on the agenda and it's advertised. It'd be
Well, you know what, Commissioner, I'm going to leave that. You're the chair of the committee.
Yeah, I'm fine with
What direction you want to take this
I'm fine
in?
with what Bill, Commissioner Wexler suggested. Just put it on and we can, worst cases, we can table it.
yeah. That way we're not springing new business on the public, like
Yeah.
So they at least we'll have a chance to comment on it before in the public's in the comment section.
Okay, so we're going to, for the next week's agenda, we're going to put on their Economic Development Committee report, or recommendations to the board?
Correct.
Okay.
Be prepared.
Yeah, I mean, it's two different things. It'll be a report from the committee to the board, and then we'll put on the agenda board action. If we don't get to it, we don't get
Or
to it.
any
We'll
action
table it.
taken, right.
Yeah.
The board action involving the first three items, right, minimally, potentially the whole.
We can be as
why don't
specific
you
or
don't-
non-specific as we want.
Okay, we'll talk about it in
Right
the
now,
committee.
I'd put the three items on the agenda, but I don't
Okay.
want to get out ahead of everybody.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
have our committee meeting first, and then we can
Okay.
make a
Thank you.
recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Graham, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. Okay. Next on, for next week's agenda, we have ordinance number P5/2016 dealing with the acquisition of 900 East Eagle Road. Does anybody have any questions or wish to
Yeah.
discuss that?
I
Mr.
do
Lewis?
have a question, and I think we may have talked about this, so I apologize if we did. But I have a question about the fifth whereas, which talks about accepting fee simple ownership of the property. I assume, and subject to, I guess, the DEP taking on all necessary remediation activities associated with the Superfund site. What are we accepting and what are we paying? Are we paying $1? Is that what we're paying, basically? Paying $1?
Do I
And
not
then an
have this resolution?
I'm sorry?
Do I not have this ordinance?
It was in, I'd have Dan send it to me.
Oh, was it
It was in
last-
From last month, it's the landed, it's the area where
Superfund
the
site.
facility is on the Superfund site, and some of the land behind it where the
There's-
treatment plant is,
Two properties involved here, two locations.
off of Hillcrest.
Right there, right on Hillcrest.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
One is on Hillcrest and Eagle, and the other one is behind the Y. It's a landlocked area.
So we get it for $1 with no liability. Is that fair summary?
yes,
Okay, that's good.
otherwise we wouldn't want it.
Right. So make sure. Make sure.
Okay, authorization for township manager to purchase 1320 Steel Road. There was a first reading on that. Any comment?
Yeah, I had a comment. So we talk about not, first off, I don't know whether we should have parameters in here. Talks about $2,000 a month. Well, also, it says 18 months.
That's a
Nope.
lease.
That was for the lease for ordinance
Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry.
P6 2016 is for 1320 Steel Road. I'm sorry.
Let's see, 13, I'm sorry, I have a question on the next one.
Okay.
Oh,
any-
wait, let me just make sure. Should we have, in section 1, should there be anything dealing with the purchase not to exceed a certain price? We talk about executing an agreement of sale, but we don't say anything about the parameters under which the sale would be consummated. So I'm just wondering, should there be a parameter in there, a dollar figure, or is that necessary?
Let me just, in the heading, we talk about the value being subject to an appraisal. And we also talk about purchasing property. So we've not defined if we're going to, at this point, purchase all or part of. It's going to depend on how the appraisal comes back. And then it would authorize the
Yes, some of this too might be something we want to talk about in executive session, yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to put a dollar amount.
Right, right. I think that these are,
Because we'll pay exactly that,
Somebody else could take it for $1 more.
or take it for $1 more.
Okay, now for ordinance P7 2016, this is the discussion, or this is the ordinance for the lease on Boyle's property.
Okay, so the actual agenda references 18-month lease, and the ordinance itself does not. So do we want to add that? Is that necessary?
Yeah, I had a question about that too, as to why it was 18 months, where that timeframe came from.
comes from the construction schedule for the new building.
That's,
And do we want to add any cushion, or do you think has the cushion in it?
There's, the lease itself has, like an evergreen provision that's, it rolls to a monthly
Oh, okay, good.
extension after that.
So it provides timeframe for the construction to go over.
Well, or
Or,
we're taking possession of the property prior to the start of construction. We'd be taking possession as of May 1st, so we could start relocating some of we have a garage full of police equipment, because the garage will just be occupied by the police department. The yard itself will be the construction yard and a laydown area for the contractors for the new building.
But is the lease term a minimum of 18 months?
It is a minimum of 18 months. The construction schedule calls for an 18-month construction
I think we should just
period.
add to section 1 that it is an 18-month lease, then, would be my suggestion,
Sure.
just for clarification, because
Okay, Mr. Solicitor, right?
That's fine.
Okay. So we're going to add the 18-month lease to it. Very good. Any other questions? Resolution 1998-2016, the modification to Oakmont Fire Company loan.
I would like our finance director to describe this to us.
Mrs. Cuthbertson?
Sure. Back in 2008, I don't know if you recall, but...
Actually, I'm sorry, can I stop you for 1 second? I apologize. Mr. Solicitor, this is not something subject to executive session, right? A renegotiation of an existing loan?
Well, it's hard to just tell you off
It's a
the top of my head. I mean,
modification,
it
not a
could,
negotiation.
right, yeah. I mean, probably not, but there are provisions under the Sunshine Act that anything that's otherwise privileged communication, so I don't know without knowing what the questions are going to be, whether it's a... you know.
Well, I mean, the resolution before us, which we'd have to do in public, is to revise some of the terms of the original loan agreement with the Oakmont Fire Company back in December of 2008.
I don't think anything contained within that resolution.
Right,
So,
so, and
executive
I wanted our finance director to describe to us the circumstances of how this resolution came to be and what her recommendations are.
Yeah, I don't think that we have a problem with
Great.
any of that.
Sorry for interrupting.
Back in 2008, the township entered into a loan agreement with Oakmont Fire Company to assist them with the construction of their fire company. The township loaned the fire company $2 million at that time at 5% interest, calling for annual debt repayments of about $160,000. They have made those. In 2010, the fire company came to us and wanted to make a lump sum principal payment, which they did, further reducing the term of that loan, and it would have been paid off in 2023, still keeping the same $160,000 loan payments. In more recent years, they've come to us asking us to re-amortize the loan, I believe just to give their budget a little bit of more of a cushion. I think they're pulling from reserves to make that loan payment, and asked us to bring the annual loan payment from $160 down to $120 a year. Since we did not have that in the budget during those years that when they first approached us, we had to defer and say, no, we couldn't agree to that because it wasn't reflected in our budget. In the 2016 budget, we did reflect a reduced payment in anticipation of this coming before you, which it is tonight. So what this will do, if the board allows us to re-amortize the loan, it will bring the annual debt service payments to $120,000, down from $160,000, but it will add a few years back to the loan, so the township will be making more interest on the loan in the end than it is currently.
what is the interest rate we charge?
5%.
That seems like it's not market rate.
Well, it was back in 2008, but yes, it probably was still below market rate at that time, too.
It was below, it's obviously above market rate now.
Back in 2000, I wasn't here, so don't know what really went into the thought process behind that.
Okay.
Well, I've got, there's
Kind of matched our borrowing.
I need to confirm that, I mean, as I recall, and I don't have the information in front of me, this loan was made to Oakmont out of the proceeds that we made when we entered into the transaction associated with the Haverford Reserve site. And I was concerned that this was out of one of the proceeds of our tax-exempt financings, but I don't think it was. But to answer your question, Mr. Lewis, part of that, entering into that transaction with the Oakmont Fire Company is we were expecting a certain amount of interest income to come from that because we were giving them $2 million instead of using it.
Right.
So I appreciate your comment about market rates, but charging them 1.25% on this right now isn't.
It was a fixed deal.
Would not be consistent with what our duties were
It
in
was a fixed deal,
2008
yeah.
when we gave them $2
Right.
million bucks.
I understand.
But that said, there's no sense, bleeding our fire company dry either. And it does sound like this still generates a decent amount of interest income for the township. There has been as I understand, a significant lump sum payment made by these folks several years ago. And that we don't have any concern about whether it will be paid back. The only discussion here is when and how it can fit in with our needs to get the money repaid, which is still faster than the original terms.
And Larry, just to point out, she did say we would get more interest money. So, I mean, Oakmont's still not getting this off. They're not
No, it's a good
getting
deal.
that
Good deal
much
for
of
the
a
No,
benefit.
no, it's going to get less. There's going to be less interest income
No, she just
to
said
us.
more.
No, excuse me, Mrs. Cuthbertson?
Yes,
You want to
it
clarify?
would be less than the original terms,
Right.
but when they came and made the principal payment, that naturally brought down all of the interest that would be earned over the course of the loan. Now, this is adding back years, so they'll be adding more interest income for us.
Right, at the end of the day, we're going to make less in interest than we originally bargained in '08, but we have gotten some of the money back sooner than we expected, which, of course, we could do whatever we wanted, with that money at that point. It becomes available to us. So, but there isn't, we're, at the end of the day, we're not going to make the same interest income on this loan that we originally negotiated in '08. And that is something we all have to be aware of as we discuss this. But trade-off is we got some of our money back in advance, and we're not talking about, some random third party. We're talking about one of our fire companies. And we all understand the value and service that our volunteer fire companies provide to us, and we also understand that for decades we've worked hand in hand with them in terms of their financing needs for equipment and their and any other cooperation they need from our township departments.
Right, thank you, Commissioner. 1 second. On the next one, we have resolution number 2004,
Are we done?
2016. Yes, I'm moving on to the next. Did you have something for? Yeah. The transfer of 2015 funds. Anybody have any questions about that? It's taking
Yeah, I
left over from one department and putting in other departments that have not.
don't know whether Lori can answer this or not, but just curious as to why street lighting has an increase of 81,000.
That's going to be Amy's question.
There was just a lot
Okay.
of repairs and maintenance. I know there was a project done at, Jack McDonald Field, which I think was charged here.
Oh, okay, so it's-
But I
it's
think it
park-
was just a
park-
multitude of smaller
Not just
repairs
street
and
lighting, then.
maintenance items.
Not just street lighting, then, it sounds like it's
No,
park
I
lighting?
I
as well?
believe there was that large project costed there. I did try and move it back to parks, but I still think some of it's there. However, the majority of it, I think, is just normal repairs and maintenance that was over and above our expectations.
And the human resources decrease, is that as a result of personnel reduction, or what is that
Yes.
attributable to?
Keeping in mind that this was the 2015 budget, we still had a position budgeted there because we weren't sure what we were going to do with that position at the time.
Okay.
So the increases match the decreases, which
That's
brings
what
us
we
to
were
a
able-
total of 0.
Right, what we're
350.
able to do this year is offset the increased departments with departments that had underspent. Instead of showing more revenue to support more spending, we were able to cost cut to support the spending.
Okay, thank you very much. Resolution number 2005-2016 is the mowing agreement with PennDOT. Any questions about that? That's 34 acres.
So I hate to keep asking questions, but.
That's why we're
I
here.
do have a question. So it's 4 mowing cycles throughout the season, which seem light. And we're paid $90.32 an acre,
Right.
which is $3,070 in total. for the season to mow these properties. My question is this something we break even on, or is this something we, I hope we at least break even on, so I'm not sure we're making any money, but are we breaking even?
I don't think it's a case of,
Well, we could, I mean, we could
Which
try
one's the going rate?
and figure out how much time we're spending with the crews on PennDOT, at the edge of PennDOT right-of-ways, where we do mowing along those areas, and in the medials, and separate that from the mowing that the crews are doing elsewhere on township properties. But I believe that if it wasn't cost-effective, the township would have let that go. You have to bear in mind also that the township takes control over an aesthetic by entering into these contracts that it wouldn't otherwise be able to do.
My understanding from past years was that if we don't enter into the agreement, we're at the will of PennDOT when and if they mow, and it often, gets unkempt, shall we say?
Yep, yeah.
So it's
So
It's a benefit that
the
way.
intersection of Haverford Road and Ardmore Avenue, is that the circle there? Is that what we're talking about there?
There is a circle,
right with
yes.
the tree.
Just the tree? That's what we're talking about? That's not even, it's
There's
more of a,
circle
it's more of a
there.
landscaped area than a grass.
Yeah, there are a couple of spots along Haverford Road.
but that is
It just
state
says-
right-of-way.
What's that?
But it is state right-of-way.
Ardmore and Haverford are both
Yeah,
state.
Yeah, but is it more than the circle?
No,
The big is
we're not
Westchester
maintaining
Pike and
the
Darby
second
Road.
property or anything.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Okay.
Otherwise, Westchester Pike goes like
Thank you.
$90 an acre.
Yeah.
An acre's pretty big.
It is pretty big.
Hey,
Any high school kids out there?
I mean, it's really big.
Resolution number 2006-2016 is the application for county aid for the road program. And this is for the allocation of $66,960 for the year, for 2016 year, that goes towards the road program, our $1.2 million road program. Any questions?
I assume that's the maximum, that's what we're entitled to?
Per year by the county, yes. Right, Mrs. Cuthbert? Thank you. Resolution number 2007-2016 is the recreational closing of Caracon Drive. This will be beginning on Sunday, April 27th, and go till Sunday, November 6th. The hours are 7 a.m. till dusk. Chief Viola will execute any and all documents with PennDOT. Any questions?
Now, we could just correct the typo. The plural of Sunday does not have an apostrophe. It's been on there for years, and it's
No, so
never
that's the
fixed.
24th or the 27th? That's,
24th in the resolution.
and let me get a calendar.
Wait, what's the issue?
My wife is an English.
Sunday, the last Sunday in April
It's the 24th.
is the 24th? Okay,
Yes. It's the 24th.
so it will begin on Sunday, April 24th, and go till
That's correct in the paperwork.
November 6th. Okay, then we have an appointment for Deputy Chief of Police. Any questions? Civil Service will be here to
They make a recommendation?
give their recommendation, yes. Then a proclamation will be the Haverford Pink Fords Cheerleaders, which will be they won the PIAA state champ. And I'll get a proclamation from them. Does anybody have any questions for the good of the township? No? I will take a motion.
I move we adjourn our work session.
So be. Thank you very much, one and all.